Hello?
Hello?
I'll have to call you back. This book, I'll find it, but it may take me 5 minutes.
Okay. I'll be waiting.
I'll call you back.
All right. Thanks, Andy. Located the tome?
Yeah, I'm just trying. Then this book is a big book. It just flopped over, so I've lost it again. But
I see. Okay.
so I think it's right in here in these couple pages here. I'm sorry.
No,
I had it
right.
all set.
No, it's all right. It's all right. It's all right. We've got plenty of time. How long have you been working on it?
A little over a year.
You know, I'm absolutely, I'm dead serious about helping you publicize it if you'd like. I mean, I'm an old newspaper man, and I'm watching my former profession die before my very eyes, but I still know a little bit about getting the word out on books. So when the time comes, feel free to call on me and see if I can't help you get to the right people with it.
All right. I can't understand where the fuck this thing is. It has to be right in here. Where? I'll call you back again.
All right.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. We're getting to be old friends.
I found it again, so I'll just read you what I wrote, and you can take down what you want.
All right. Sounds good.
Being away on tour was a way of hiding from my problems for a while, but they were all still waiting for me, and when I finally returned home, whether because of the parting with Claudine or for other, less tangible reasons, my life was now in a complete turmoil. I couldn't figure out anything, why I was getting divorced, why I wasn't happy with my life, and physically I wasn't feeling well either. So I decided to get a full examination of my physical and mental condition at Scripps Clinic near San Diego. So that's where I went.
Mm-hmm.
And the last person I saw there was a psychiatrist. I'll just skip through some of it. After I told my life story, he said, you know, you might be helped by LSD treatment. You should see a shrink for years. You could see us here, trying to find out why you're not happy, but LSD might give you the answer in a few sessions. LSD was then seen as something of a miracle drug, and doubts about it were only just beginning to surface. So I went to Scripps, and I eventually saw the psychiatrist, and that's what he told me, that I could do the LSD treatment. I talked to Claudine and persuaded her to give LSD a try with me. I wonder now if I'd really accepted that we'd split up for good, or whether I was still clung to the hope that somehow it might all be all right again. I had friends who had split up that I kept making excuses to see their wives prolonging their agony. It goes on. Whatever the reason, for the first session was all set up when the psychiatrist from Scripps called and said, I'm sorry, we can't do those treatments anymore. Timothy Leary's turn on, tune in, drop out rhetoric was drawing a line of unfavorable press and causing such problems for the Scripps clinics that they had decided to cease LSD treatments. Having told me all this, the psychiatrist paused for a few seconds and I said, however, if you still are interested, I do know a place in Hollywood, Canada, where it's still allowed. So that's what that situation was.
Huh.
We were going to do it.
Yeah.
Set up at my house where it was comfortable and everything.
Mm.
And then they were not allowed to do it anymore. And he said, how about, if you're still interested, is Hollywood, Canada.
Uh-huh.
So Claudine felt that if it wasn't at Scripps, she didn't want to do it. But having gone this far, I felt I had nothing to lose, so I went ahead and flew up to Canada alone. I stayed for a couple of weeks at the clinic while a doctor named Ross McLean administered LSD and mescaline to me in different dosages and supervised my trips. They took place in an antiseptic-looking room, watched over by Dr. McLean and his assistants. The LSD was in liquid form, dripped onto a sugar cube or a tiny square of blotting paper, and was odorless, colorless, tasteless. The mescaline was solid and had a bitter, musty taste. The first time I took it, I threw up. First time I took LSD, I waited for a minute. For minutes on end, nothing occurred. It seemed to be happening. I don't think it's working, I said. Doctor said, smiled and said, give it time. Then things started to happen. Shapes began shifting and changing, colors and sounds intensifying. I'd become completely absorbed in something, unaware of anything around me, but then I'd snap back to reality, spiraling in and out of awareness of my surroundings. I fought it at first, feeling a wave of panic, the loss of self-control, but then as the drug really took hold, I relaxed and was completely engulfed. When hours later I began to come down again, I could not have told you if minutes, hours, or even days had passed. McLean gave me different visual stimuli and played different kinds of music, all the way from the most soft and sensual sounds to marching bands, and noted the reactions I experienced, the things that most people did when taking psychedelic drugs, the intense heightening sense, the beauty of colors and sounds, the contrasting faces, a feeling like a lord of the cosmos one moment and being totally absorbed in some microscopic detail the next. A colored thread fluttered into the breeze, dust motes hanging in the air. Then it goes on. You want any more?
Wow. Well, what was the outcome of it all?
Well, that comes later. The outcome was nothing.
I see. The outcome was nothing. Okay.
LSD gave me some powerful feelings of euphoria, some sex-related, but also sometimes those of fear and despair. During the sessions, I was even born again, not in the evangelical sense, but in the very painful physical sensation of birth. I'm not sure if the LSD experience itself did me any great good, but one thing certainly did come out of my time at the clinic. It was probably the first time in many years that I had taken even a few days out of my schedule. In between the LSD sessions in Canada, I had time to reflect on the direction of my life and had been taking about what my priorities should be. I finally came to realize that my children and my relationships with my family were the only things that really counted. Nothing else was important. Sadly, that realization came too late to save my marriage to Claudine. It's entirely my fault and all that stuff then.
Huh.
So I never really got anything out of it other than to realize that everything is bullshit.
Well, that's kind of a big thing. A lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I think it changed my life in that way. That things that I used to think were important are not important anymore.
Yeah, I think that's at the crux of it. I've done enough interviews with people who went through treatment programs at Spring Grove and Hollywood Hospital and down in Palo Alto in Menlo Park to come to the conclusion that that's really what happens. It's a complete shift in attitude, and with some people it's so profound that like this fellow that I spoke with in Baltimore a couple of months ago, he was a total alcoholic, and he went through 2 sessions of LSD at Spring Grove 45 years ago, and he's never had a drink since. And he maintains that it's because of that same, epiphany or wake-up call. It completely changed his value system, and I think that's probably what...
Well, I think it did. I think that's true with me too. Yeah, but I didn't think of it as something so shocking that I didn't stop drinking.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people don't stop drinking, but maybe it has an effect in terms of moderation. It doesn't become an addiction.
Yes, it does.
Does it?
No, I am a moderate drinker. Very
well, a moderate drinker, sure.
Yeah.
That's considerably different from having to wake up to vodka and spend the rest of the afternoon with.
Well, I never was that far in, I guess. So. I never was that big a drinker.
Well, that's pretty good stuff. I
don't know whether that'll do you any good for your book, because you've probably been through all that before. But
well, yeah, but I mean, the fact that it changes people's lives is what intrigues me. And, it sounds like even if it was in a general sense, it changed the way you look at your life and the way you looked at your own value system.
It also might have been completely different if it had been in my home instead of in this hospital-looking thing with bars on the windows.
There were bars on the windows?
Sure.
No kidding.
Yeah, there were.
Huh. Well...
and it was a very antiseptic kind of place.
Yeah.
and sitting around with 3 other people looking at you and notepads and stuff.
Well, I guess that's not quite the way that they counsel people do it now. I mean, they have with these clinical studies that they're doing at Johns Hopkins and at UCLA, they transform the hospital room into I don't know, almost a den of it's damask hanging from the walls and flowers and music and that sort of thing.
Completely nicer atmosphere.
Yeah. No, I had no idea that that's how it was handled at Hollywood Hospital. I thought they were more enlightened than that.
Well, not when I was there. Or at least they didn't do that for me.
Huh. How long were you there? Just for a week?
I was there about 2 weeks, I think.
2 weeks.
I know that I went salmon fishing for a while with Dr. McLean because they had to wait a certain amount of time, I think, from one to another.
Wow.
You just can't take those treatments and then the next day take another one.
Well, did you catch anything?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, good.
They didn't mean anything to me. They weren't my family. So anyway, that's all I could tell you anyway, and I don't know that did you any.
Well, that's fine. No, that's great. That gives me some insight, and I genuinely.
I went into it to get some answers.
Yeah.
And the only answer I could find that I came out with was that I fucked up, and ruined my marriage, and that maybe if I'd had one of these a long time before I got to that point, I would have been all right. I wouldn't have screwed up because, part of it was because I was fucking around a lot.
Yeah. Well.
And if I hadn't been, it might have been a different, or if I had taken the LSD while I was, before it was over with Claudine, it might not have been over, I might have changed enough from the stuff that I would have been okay. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know much about LSD.
Well,
I just know I don't want to take any anymore.
I see. You're finished with it, huh?
Oh, I was finished with it when I came out of there.
I see.
I didn't like that being born again.
Well, I think you only do that once. Well, which was worse, mescaline or LSD?
I don't know. I can't remember one being worse than the other one.
Yeah. But you wouldn't recommend it to anybody?
I wouldn't say that either because, they might have a completely different, feeling about it. Have you ever talked to Cary Grant?
No, I didn't.
Well, he's done experimenting and stuff with it.
Well, be a little difficult to talk to him now, unfortunately, but...
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, I
wish you a lot of luck with your book.
Well, I wish you a lot with yours. And again, as I said, when the time comes closer to publishing it, who's your publisher?
Yes, Viking.
Good publisher. You get closer to publication, and you need some...
Well, it's supposed to be September.
Okay. So it's on the
and
September
it's all, it's all scheduled to when I'm going to be doing some of the shows and promoting the book.
Right.
Which will be in October. I'll go first to England for a couple weeks.
Wow.
It's published over there by Orion. I don't know that publishing, but it's supposed to be a big publisher.
Right. Well, I'm impressed. I mean, on top of everything else, you're an author.
Well, it's an interesting book. There's enough stuff there that's interesting.
I can imagine. I think you've probably had a remarkable life.
Well, I'm quibbling about one thing. I'm working with a writer, and all the stories are mine, and I've told them all, and I told him a lot more than I really should have, with the understanding that it wouldn't be published if I didn't want it to be.
Right.
But I should just say everything. So I told him, for instance, one story, and he doesn't want to take it out. And it's about Fred McMurray and June Haver. And June Haver, I don't know whether you're familiar with her, but she was an actress. She played in a movie called McDougal Sisters with Betty Grable.
Wasn't she
under contract? 20th Century Fox.
She was a sister. She had a sister who was also an actress, didn't she?
I don't know.
I think she did. But go ahead, at any rate.
So anyway, she went into a nunnery because, I mean, she was the sweetest girl. Yeah. So in writing the thing, I just play up because it's important to play up how sweet she was, and how innocent she was, and how pure. She went into to become a nun, and after a couple of years, she decided that wasn't really what she wanted, and she got out, and then she went back to acting and stuff, and then I think she did the Dolly Sisters with Betty Grable, and anyway, she's never and didn't drink. So I was invited to go over to Munich for the opening of the new Sheraton Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
This friend of mine, Ed Crowley, was a manager of a hotel called the Ambassador West.
Yeah.
In Los Angeles, and he occasionally would ask movie stars or names if they would like to take a trip to somebody. We went to one to Colombia, to Bogota, or whatever it's called. And we went to this one in Munich, and Fred McMurray and June Haver went there. And June, as I say, is the sweetest, nicest, loveliest young lady, and never sweared and never drank and never did anything. And in the excitement of the opening, and there were 500 people in the lobby of the new hotel,
mm-hmm.
all dressed in tuxedos and gowns and stuff. And she got kind of carried away in that atmosphere, and champagne was going around, and she had a glass of champagne with me. And then she had 2 glasses of champagne, and then she got drunk. And then she said, you know that big farm that Fred and I have out in the valley? And I said, yeah, I know that. She said, well, there's a great big tree out there, an oak tree. It must be 1,000 years old. Isn't that right, Fred? Fred said, yeah, but honey, don't. And she said, and he used to take me up under that big oak tree and just fuck the shit out of me, didn't you, Fred? And Fred said, yeah, well, yeah, honey, but, don't do it. Because he knew what was coming. And she said, and he had a cock this big, didn't you, honey? She was waving a champagne bottle around. It's as big as this, isn't it, honey? And Fred said, yeah, but that. And then she passed out. And he picked her up and put her over his shoulder, and I had to walk through this whole lobby of people saying, excuse me, all these people drinking champagne on it. And took her up to his room, up to their room, and then she didn't come out the next day. In fact, we didn't see her the rest of the trip. She was just probably sick and embarrassed and everything, Well, it's a funny story, but again, I don't want it in there.
Well,
he wants it in there.
Well,
he said it's funny.
Well, it is funny, but Andy, if you don't want it in there, I mean, it's your name's on the book. You have.
Well, I mean,
you have rights.
I'm not a prude at all, but I don't think. I think I'm capitalizing on movie star names to tell a dirty story. True, but.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a value judgment on your part. I don't know that it makes any point. My philosophy as a writer is you include stories like that not just for shock value. You include stories like that if it makes a point.
Well, the point he is making is that we need more and more things where you're actually involved in them yourself, rather than my saying, I worked with Judy Garland on my show, and she was absolutely terrific. I loved her. That's not enough. He said, we need things like you and Judy in rehearsal would talk about things. So I remembered some things that we did talk about that were funny,
mm-hmm.
but that's the kind of thing that we needed more of. And so I'm talking about Fred McMurray and how cheap he was, and playing golf with him, and that he wouldn't hit a golf ball over the one thing because there was a big gully there, and he'd take out an old ball. He was very cheap. Well, he was. He wouldn't leave his clubs at the clubhouse because he'd have to tip somebody. He carried him out himself, and then he put him in his car, and then he came back. And if he went to a hotel, he'd carry him up himself. He didn't want to tip. He was very rich.
Well,
so I'm talking about him, and he's a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
Was a good friend of mine.
Right.
And then I tell this story about this thing. So he said it's important that you're telling things about where you're actually there, rather than some of the other stories I've told with friends of mine that I wasn't really there.
Oh, I see what he's
So that's the reasoning that he would like to keep it in.
Well,
I think. I mean, that's what he says.
Well, I understand what he's trying to do, but again, in terms of who has the say-so, what does or does not go in, I would think that.
Yeah. Well, on the other hand, I don't know much about about book publishing or anything, and I don't know whether you need shock value to sell anything these days, or whether there's enough funny stuff in there, and there's enough dirty stuff in there, but it's not just a young girl saying he's got a cock that big, don't you, honey?
Well, I'm not sure that shock value works as much as it once did. I mean, it's not. We've all been so shocked so many times that we're numb to it. I don't think that that's what sells books. I think what sells books.
Well, and especially with me, my image is completely opposite of that.
Right, of course.
And I don't know whether I'm going to turn off a lot of, really fans of mine who think I'm, Pat Boone, which I'm not.
Well, I don't think anybody thinks you're Pat Boone. I mean, I would hope to God.
Well, they sure won't think so after reading this book, because
well,
they sure they'll tell I'm not Pat Boone.
Well,
but I don't know whether I should put this in there or not. So I've sent it to two friends of mine, close friends, my best friends, my two best friends in the world.
Yeah.
And we just emailed them through yesterday, so I haven't heard back yet, to see what they think. And if one of them says, "God, you'd be stupid to put that in there," it's funny, but I mean, you don't want them to think that you're that kind of guy.
Well, even with a story like that, Andy, you could tell it without just being gross and still get the same effect. It's a matter.
Well, I also rewrote it saying, "And you're hung like that, aren't you, honey?" Well, it's just like saying, telling a joke about a blind man. He said, "Why did you give your dog a cookie? He almost got you killed." He said, "I just wanted to find out where his head was so I could kick him in the ass." Well, but it doesn't work if you say, "I wanted to kick him in the rump."
No, it doesn't.
You got to say ass.
I suppose that's true.
So if you're going to say, "You're hung like a donkey, aren't you, Fred?" That isn't as funny as saying you got a cock that big.
Well, it's different when you deliver it in a speech, as opposed to when you put it in writing too. I think you can get away with saying on the page that he was hung like a horse. You don't have to use the same kind of verbiage that you'd use if you were standing up in front of an audience. And
what are you going to say when he said, "He took me up there under this big tree and fucked the shit out of me"? Took me under this big tree and we made love all night. Well, who gives a shit
you
about
can't
that?
say that, but I can. But I don't know. I mean,
and we fooled around. Got to be fucked the shit out of me, or it isn't funny.
Well, I suppose.
Especially when you've set up that she was going to be a nun.
Right. Well, that's true. There is a little contrast there. It makes you wonder what they do up at the convent all day.
Well, I know what they do in some of the ones that men go to.
Oh, yeah?
They just have daisy chains,
I see. Okay.
That I know about. I mean, a good friend of mine was going to become a priest, and he said that's all they did.
Well,
group therapy, I guess it's called.
Toss that in the book. That.
No, I've left in a thing about my friend Billy Pearson, and he comes up to Ava Gardner. I had to set up this whole thing, but which I don't want to take the time to do now. But it's in a movie called Judge Roy Bean, and he's the only man left in town. And Ava Gardner, who's playing the part of Lily Langtry to the hanging judge, Judge Roy Bean. Mm-hmm. And he's dead, and she's got all these letters from him, so she shows up. And John Huston said to Billy, "This is very important. We've only got her for this day. It has to be. We have one shot. The lights are going down. We have this big train that's going to be coming in. It's got to stop on this mark. And then she comes out on the caboose in a veil and a hat and stuff. But for the first time, we see Ava Gardner. Up until that time, we've just seen posters of her.
Right.
So it's very important that this comes off right now because we won't have another chance." And he said, yeah. Billy Pearson is a little jockey, about 5'2".
Right.
and he plays the station master. He said, now when it stops on that mark, go in there and say your lines to her. It doesn't matter. We're not going to pick up the line because we'll have to dub that in later. But it's her scene, and don't blow it up. So the train comes in, choo 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 choo, and lands right on the mark. And he said, "Go, Billy." And Billy went up there carrying his lantern that he always had when he was in the picture, walking around. And he said, "Well, welcome to Judge Roy Bean's town. Have you ever had your pussy eaten by an old man, Miss Langtry?" And Ava Gardner broke up. She started to laugh. And John Huston yelled cut, and then said, and started chasing Billy and all around the lot, saying, "I'll kill you, you little bastard! I'll kill you!" They were able to save it because they cut to her in another way or something, and then the line was dubbed in later about Miss Langtry. The judge would be so proud that you have come to see his town. First thing he said, "Have you ever had your pussy eaten by an old man, Miss Langtry?" Well, I've left that in the book because that's funny, and it's not. It's not. Here's a cock this big, isn't it?
Well,
Billy was one of my best friends. I did sing a song in the movie. I guess that ties me in a little bit with it. Anyway, I've got to go, and I'm bored you enough, I'm sure.
Not at all. I'm not at all bored, but I do respect that you have to get busy.
Yeah, it's running short now, so we've sent the final thing to him, and I sent him the email saying I don't want to put it in the book.
Yeah.
But now if two of my best friends call me back and say, "Jesus, that's funny," I'd leave it in. Then I'll probably have to go back and say, "Well, I've changed my mind. Let's leave it in."
Well, it is hilarious, and
it is funny, but
well, I mean, it's.
I'm just thinking of all these little old ladies that just adore me. 80 years old that are going to read this thing and say, "Gee, well, he's just a pervert."
Oh, come on, Andy. When you get to, you get to a certain point in your life, don't you? I mean, you get to a certain point in your life, and you got to start dropping the pretenses and say, I am who I am.
Well, yeah, well, it's in there. It's just I didn't know whether I should go that far or not.
Well, I don't know. I think it probably shows you to be human. And the little old ladies, if they haven't been through a few things like that by the time they get to be the age that they are, then there's something wrong with them too.
Oh yeah, well, we know that.
Yeah, right.
Half of my audience is something wrong with them. Well, half of them are over 65.
Well, I know. I've been to Branson. I know.
And I mean, over the years, I have had this reputation of being a really, nice guy. Not.
Well, and how is that different? Simply because you've been around the block a few times. You're still a pretty nice guy.
Well, I am.
Okay.
Since my LSD treatment is much nicer.
Made you see the world differently.
Yes.
Well, this has been a real pleasure. So
thanks very much.
All right, thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.